Hello, and thank you everyone for another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. This week, episode 23, we're actually going to be sitting down with actor Jeff Bosley, and we're going to talk to him about the world of Hollywood, the world of making movies, everything behind the scenes that he's experienced, kind of sharing our stories. And we're just going to get into it because we have a lot of fun stuff we want to talk about, and I think a lot of people are going to definitely enjoy what we have to say. So sit with us, and here we go. All right, here we go.
To answer a question that was not asked on the air, yeah, just about. We'll see what happens. We'll try to keep it in that ballpark. Secondly, thank you so much for joining us here today, Jeff Bosley. Taylor, thank you for getting Jeff Bosley on the show.
Yeah, so I've actually met Jeff a few years ago because of a mutual friend of ours. We were actually talking about him on the stage. Karen, the former Nicecast, he is a Indian filmmaker. He was really big in the release of Snyder Cut movement. That's how he got on my radar. We ended up talking a lot. He's a big auteur style filmmaker, and he's trying to hone his craft. And a lot of people, I don't know, he doesn't vibe with a lot of people because he's very, very fixated on his craft, but he vibed very well with me and very well with Jeff. And I think he's just great. So definitely a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously goes without saying, but there's like, I always liken it to like smokers. You don't have to know, I don't smoke, but I smoked in a play once. Now I feel like I have. And like, you see a smoker and automatically there's like a bond, like a camaraderie, like this rapport. And your brothers, you go out and smoke and you go inside and you never see them again. And I see that with like the Snyder movement was obviously a huge one. Like it pulled people out good and bad. Yeah. I had the blue and yellow release shirts. K and I call him K because there was a point he called himself Keith because us Americans were like, Karen, isn't that? You know, it's like, come on.
Yeah, so I got all my hoodies and all my shirts, all that fun stuff. And,
but it was cool. Karen, and obviously we vibe. Cool, he's very viable if you are if you speak his love language.
Yeah, like if you are, I don't know how to put it, like if you understand the world that he loves, then you can get along with him very well. And if you don't truly understand how filmmaking works, he'll say things that go right over your head, and then he'll come off as pretentious, but it's just because that's how the craft is.
100%. Yeah.
Well, and it's a very interesting crossroads, that nerddom crossroads with this thing called cinema. Yes. And because so many of these movies, unfortunately, they just miss the mark on cinema. Yep. Now, when they do hit that level, it's great, but cinema is something that people can either if you just like a movie and watch the whole thing, the filmmaker did the correct job. For example, I just saw The Green Knight. Okay. A lot of big choices in that movie, a lot of scenes that make you think and stuff like that. Love it or hate that movie, I can very clearly see the vision of a filmmaker there and the story that person wants to tell. So where do we fall today? How do we get these comic books to feel like cinema? Because when it does feel like cinema, it knocks it out of the park. And we go, oh my goodness, what a great experience. But for every one of those, there's an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantum of Solace where it's like, oh, okay, you just had a battle and your face is gorgeous. You never once get dirty.
Yeah, they're phoning it. I think, and I'm gonna kind of what Taylor said. I mean, you said like to the point where sadly, in a weird way, like movies aren't made for the general population. That's kind of what we were talking before we hit record. Is the producers? I mean, who wouldn't want to create, whether they're creating a tire for a tire company or a cinema thing, at the end of the day, you're like, profit. You know, sometimes obviously it gets horse blinders and it ruins it. Therein lies conversation. But of course, they're going to be like, what is going to make the most profit? And I touched on the air. The Godfather won't now. You just churn out yet another Ant-Man. They can accidentally succeed, quote unquote, but they're phoning it in because they don't have, like, I think, and I just thought of this while you were talking, is it feels like they don't have to earn it anymore. Like that's where I think the good stuff. If you just go back in time, things were essentially better. I mean, even Blade. I love Blade, and people always say that was a comic book movie. It was like if not the first, maybe. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it was the first. It was the one that started the superhero arms race.
Yeah, and they had to earn it. Like they had nothing to be compared to. So like that's huge. But like, I mean, it feels a cliche, but cookie cutter. Like you could close your eyes and you fall asleep during Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantum Hoo-Ha and wake up. You're like, I didn't miss anything. I'm good. I don't need to rewind.
There's a sameness sometimes to Marvel action where I zone out, where it's like, oh, okay, another explosion happens. It didn't happen in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. The only time, have you seen the movie?
I did, and
okay.
I love where you're going with it.
The only scene in that movie that felt a little bit paint by numbers was when the ships became 3 ships, and it felt very Star Wars-y for a second. And
okay, I'll buy that.
That was the only scene I was like, okay, let's get.
Paint by numbers is a perfect way to put it. Yeah.
But then you see a scene like the hallway scene in that movie, and you can very clearly see its influences of Old Boy or The Matrix, and taking all of these moments and giving everybody their slam dunk moment.
Yes. That's the thing is it's that Venn diagram we were talking about earlier is they're checking the box to make the producers happy because like for whatever reason they think, hey, we got to have a lot of explosions and all this thing. But then Gunn, to his credit, and I know that's definitely a topic in nerddom, he found a way to overlap as many circles in that Venn diagram. He checked some producer box, paint by number things where they feel we have to do this Marvel formula or we won't make money. And he's like, all right, check that box. I'll give you that. He thought. But then he did. Well, he pulled some performances out of Batista that just, I was like, floored.
And
he also, Taylor, I'm going to let you finish. All right. He also made Batista not sit through 6 hours of makeup every day. They literally took, all of a sudden, Batista... He didn't have to do any of those performances anymore. And I don't know where this means in Hollywood, but like the 2 ladies like, no, you're sitting through the whole thing. Get your makeup on. Wait, Gamora's still going to look like Gamora. Okay, I apologize, Taylor. Please continue.
That made Guardians of the Galaxy 3 stand out compared to Marvel movies, right? I mean, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Captain Marvel, all the ones that we say are very paint by numbers. It was because of all the stuff that happened with James Gunn getting fired and then coming back. He had a bargaining chip when they brought him back, and he said, I'm making the film that I want to make, and this is going to be my movie. So his movies have never fit in the larger narrative.
Yeah, and that's what they gave him the Talking Raccoon movie.
They gave him exactly what he wanted, and they didn't force feed, here's all this connective tissues you need to add, and he's like, not doing it.
Yeah.
And his movies were his movies, and I think that's probably why they worked so much better than half the other part 3 of a trilogy, because Marvel has this tendency of part 3 of their trilogies not being actually their trilogy.
Like the final act.
Like Captain America Civil War is not the Captain America movie, it's an Avengers movie.
Yeah, those movies are you think you're going to see what they are. They are starter doughs for other movies where 5 people show up.
Exactly, 100%. Well, I think, who is the director of Ultron? Was it Whedon?
Whedon.
So I remember he said, to his credit, he even said it was hard for him to direct that because they said essentially we had to hit these beats. Like, okay, it's a Marvel movie, this movie, we have to do this, and in Avengers movies, these are the things. I mean, you can only imagine the whiteboard that Feige hasn't. Like, I picture, what's that movie? The Philadelphia, that meme with the guy in the yarn and everything, and all the 3x5 cards. I just picture, that's Feige's brain. And I think
Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's like sitting there with the
exactly. And I think that, to his credit, like, I watched Endgame again, and I was like, they nailed it, but it just, for some reason, the after of that, for whatever reason, like you said, it's that paint by numbers, and Gunn was the only one to just say, I love that you said that. That's brilliant. Like you said, I'm doing it away. And it shows. Like, it absolutely still stands out, and it's kind of like, that's sad. Like, I love the Marvel movies. I love them, but God, I'm just nervous now.
Do we as responsible fans see? Because here's the thing. Because the thing I don't want to say is, hey, maybe we just don't go see the next thing. But unfortunately, that hurts a bunch of people in an industry that is already difficult enough to be working in. Yeah. So now we're going to tank these projects. And from the DC side, which Taylor tells to me ad nauseum at this point, all of those movies were so hampered by be like this, be like that, input. I mean, they've just been noted to death, where they ran a much different death, where it feels like nothing in the stuff movies matter.
Well, yeah, they swung for a different fence, you know, like, and I mean, obviously there's a bias to the following statements, but to me, I think Snyder, like the scene where Henry Cavill's just running his hand over like the flowers, and it's this really tight shot when he first was resurrected. I think it was when he was resurrected. Yeah. It looks like a comic panel, and he swung so hard to mimic, like, whether it was Dark Knight Returns shots, like he honored specific frames, but as a result, he alienated. So he swung for the fence to that fandom and alienated the happy producer formulaic checklists. And then so they died quick. Whereas the checklist thing, sadly, that we all like to go watch popcorn movies. I'll watch a crappy movie once because I like movies, you know, and that's how people succeed making crap movies.
Totally heard, and I am also on that way. So just so our audience know, Jeff had one real job before he went to the business, which is at a tire shop. So he everything he knows is about tires. My first job that for some reason I held on to for a long time was Blockbuster, and we would watch all the G's movies. And there's so many movies that, you know, I promise you, me and you cannot name most of the movies that came out in 2003, but like, Be Cool was a fine one-time viewing. You know what I mean?
That's a big grab. Be Cool was hard to watch.
It's the sequel to Get Shorty, but there's a time and place, and so many of these things. You're right. There is a thing of popcorn movies. It's kind of in one ear, and it's sad that superhero movies have become such a dime a dozen that it doesn't feel special anymore to work on them.
They saturated their own pool. And then the other thing, and I'll bastardize what Matt Damon said on some interview, he was talking about how now, because there's, like, before they even make profit, because there's no more DVDs anymore and it goes straight to streaming, the movie releases, now their fear of risk is virtually, they almost going, we have to guarantee a giant profit or we aren't going to make it. So that's where they start neglecting stuff like, if The Godfather was pitched now or Rocky was pitched now, they go, we need guaranteed Fast X or the Rock movie, whatever the what. And now we're going to just get those things that fill that void, which sucks.
I love that you have a Rocky poster, that this Rocky poster is a narrative, a part of your life, because
it is.
I think that we know culturally, I think everyone knows the meme of Rocky. That is why Sylvester Stallone is a mega movie star. We know the meme of it, but I don't think people remember what Rocky is. He is a special needs guy. He talks with a weird. The first movie is not like the other movies, which is an action movie with montages. That first movie is a drama about a special needs man and a special needs woman who fall in love, and everybody tells him he is an idiot. That is not a movie you could get made today.
No, and to Michael's credit, I actually watched all of them with my son recently. He wanted to watch them all. I'm like, all right, we're going to marathon these. Awesome. And now we're on Creed 3. We haven't yet watched it yet. We'll go pick it up eventually. Okay. But in Rocky 1, there was that scene where he's trying to do the commercial. And they're like, okay, now he's going to be a baby in this scene. Like, he's a caveman in this scene. Why can't you just read the cards? You're an idiot. And then I'm just like watching this. I'm like, this is not the kind of movie you would see ever again.
Her brother is screaming at him, "You're a bum, you're an idiot." Like,
it was a negative. It was like a hard watch Forrest Gump. Like, if you really think about it, it wasn't an encouraging Forrest Gump. It was a making fun of Forrest Gump. And
Rocky is an inner city Forrest Gump. I've never thought about it that way, but it's pretty true because he goes because
new ground.
Yeah, and again, I don't think people understand this. Rocky does not win in the first movie. He just goes the distance. He just shows, don't count me out.
He gets beat senseless better than the other guys, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's such great physical storytelling. Hollywood would not have a movie where Captain America goes second place in the movie.
Well, when was the last time you watched a movie that had... It was still a popcorn movie that was anti-popcorn. Like, I have this huge Memorial Day thing. I don't want to be somber and down, but like, I actually just watched Black Hawk Down before we signed on. So like, I needed a little uplifting chat. But it's Ridley Scott, love him or hate him. He's a good filmmaker. And like, whether you love war movies or what, like, disregard that. It's well shot. It's well timed. It's obviously based on a true story, but like, when was the last time? I can't think of the last time I sat in a movie and said, oh, wow, I can't believe they made that. that didn't just bomb. You know, like what is the Matt Damon one, Air? I think I haven't seen it yet, but that doesn't fall in the category of guaranteed income. Like that probably had to come out of so many different people's pockets to produce.
100%. And I think they got back end up front because it's streaming right now. I'm pretty sure it's streaming.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
On Amazon.
Right. So very clearly he knew get the rights sold to me. Like here it's going right to this place to get the content out there. Yeah. I mean, now we are full circle again to bring up the writer's strike.
Yeah.
This new world, this new environment, it's becoming more difficult. And the fact that these properties are living in perpetuity now on these platforms.
Yeah.
One of the things Taylor's brought up, there's a number of shows that are only on Disney Plus. You can't buy them. You can only watch them here. So the writers aren't getting, they got paid for the initial product. Are they getting paid for those restreams?
Yeah.
Now, if a show does poorly, I understand that, but why aren't there incentive for shows to do good? And all of a sudden, what if we put those checks and balances back in there again? What would that content then look like?
Well, and it goes back to, and I just always use the tire store as a joke. Like I did that in high school, but if you make a tire and people keep using it, unless you did a bad deal when you sold the brand or whatever, you would make money every time you sold that tire. That's not like some artistic, artsy-fartsy, sensical financial setup. That's just, if a little girl sells lemonade on the side of the street and she sells multiple cups, she gets paid for every cup, even though it's the same product, you know. And I don't know why there's this just bastardization of that, because like I just watched I just did an X-Men, not chronological order, not reorder, and like you're saying, they were on multiple different services because of all the different Sony, who owns what, whatever, and who's getting paid, and you know that's getting lost. At least for me as an actor, Betty was asking me, my better half was asking me, can you track your residuals? I was like, not because I'm lazy. You couldn't be the most savant genius and pre-plan your residuals.
Their number systems aren't good. They don't know they know devices and times, but they don't know if it's on cell phones or not. Like when they do Twitch numbers, sometimes those numbers, it's like, oh, they don't know what's on a cell phone and what's not.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy thing to say. 20 years ago, they thought, well, no one will watch a movie on a screen this big. Now today, that's how people consume it on their break time. Yeah. And, I want to consume it when I want to consume it.
It was easy to attach to a DVD or Blu-ray because it was a physical product that you could loosely attach a 1-to-1 ratio of use to value. And
that's gone. I mean, it's all up in the air now.
But on that note, it's very interesting because amid the writer's strike, you now have Bob Iger and David Zaslav both saying that they're trying to bring back DVDs and Blu-rays as the primary means for people to consume this media, which is, to me, I'm really hoping that means that a lot of their original content for Disney Plus and HBO Max will eventually be accessible on DVDs, because Netflix did this thing where like the first few seasons of House of Cards were on DVD, and then the first couple seasons of Stranger Things, and then nothing ever again.
I remember that. You're right. Yeah.
They need to bring that back, because
I think the only way they'll do it is to, like, they'd have to be somebody big like them and say, not like they don't negotiate with terrorists. Like they just say this is how it is now. Like, oh, I guess this is like me with the X-Men when I was like, oh, I guess I'm buying it on Amazon here. I don't have a choice. If they just say, sorry, it's not released. If they basically just flip the script on what they've been doing with streaming. If you want to watch Captain America or Winter Soldier and Falcon and Winter Soldier, go to your local DVD retailer. And we're like, we got to get in the car and drive. Which I would love. But it's, I don't know, but will that, in the I'll just call it the Matt Damon equation, where he was referencing because there's not hard copies. Will that fix now less crappy movies?
No, it's not. And we're never going back to that world. I mean, let's look at let's take the example of what Napster did. Napster showed that downloading music online was very doable, but it was like the Wild West, and we were just stealing that shit all at once. Yeah. So what did they do is, the record industries, look at the world we have now. For $5.99, you just have access to all the music. You know what I mean? Now, sometimes there's some dispersions in there, but for the most part, this is what consumer is. And it's weird that, here we are with these weird contracts and weird streaming wars where these movies make money in these weird ways and they get sold to all these different platforms worldwide, where it blows my mind that, MGM is going out of business that, has been going forever and ever and ever. And there's just not a streaming service with like, okay, great, here's every MGM movie ever made.
Yeah.
Here's the vault. Here's all of it. Yeah. I still don't understand why we have these weird barriers. And especially if something does well, like, where is Spider-Man Far From Home streaming?
Disney Plus and Disney Plus.
The one with Doctor Strange?
Yeah, Disney Plus, and finally brokered a deal with Sony, and all the Spider-Man movies are finally going to Disney Plus.
Okay, they're not there yet. Okay, because I'm pretty sure it was on Stars, and it's like, if your movie's going to go to one of these platforms, I'm just not going to see it for a while.
The only ones that aren't on Disney Plus now are Venom 2 and Far From Home. Everything else is there, though.
Okay.
Yeah, they just had a weird shift. I noticed because I noticed like randomly. That's when I did this X-Men thing. I'd get all these. You should watch this stuff, and I was like, this is actually here now, But why is it over here? And because I got, what was it, the Criterion Collection? You remember that? Like now, guys, wasn't it DMs? Like that would be an amazing release, like an actual streamer that has a Criterion channel or whatever. And again, those were quality movies. Those weren't dumb popcorn eating, turn your brain off.
And funny enough, I guess the model that is in place now does work maybe for those, but the world has changed so much. I mean, Martin Scorsese's new movie looks great, but it's going right to Apple, right? Like almost, I mean, it'll go to one theater so he can get the Academy Award nod, but it's going to be streaming on Christmas for me to eat popcorn too.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I don't know, like, and that's the thing is it baffles me because I don't know if it was the whole pandemic thing or what, but like what ruined theater? Like that is my favorite thing is to go to a surround sound movie and just sit there and hear that. And I don't know why. And it's not. I'm a broke actor. I can afford a matinee. I mean, I know it's doable, and it baffles me that is for some reason because if the only way to get it was in a theater, that would create a monopoly that we used to have in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. But now,
well. And it's so interesting. So people don't understand in LA, it's very expensive to see a movie. It's not necessarily the movie. It just has to be getting to the movie and then paying for parking for the movie.
Once I moved out of LA, my perspective changed. Like I would never leave my house because it cost me $1, $10 to start my truck.
Right, but my mom, even, she grew up as a latchkey kid in the 70s. So she's even talking about how her mom would be like, great, here's X amount of dollars. Here's $1. Go see 3 movies all day, and you're going to eat a bucket of popcorn for lunch, and I'll pick you up when mom shifts over. Why aren't movies playing $5 movies all day? Why aren't kids going and why isn't they just playing these movies all day long and people can bring a notebook in there and take notes and do something with it and have it be like a free, because it's not like that. Movies
Saturday. I remember I wanted to go to a matinee for Guardians 3, and I live in a small, I was able to finally get out of LA and I was able to move outside into Omaha, Nebraska. And I was like, I just assumed I was in like LA headspace where I was going to have 40 options of times available. And that threw me off. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not in LA anymore. But then I was thrown that there was no 10 a.m. Saturday matinee. I was like, oh, I'm waiting till 1 p.m.
The first showing's at noon? What is this?
Yeah. I know. I was like, I'm up. I want to watch it now. Give me what I want, But then it comes full circle back to, for some reason, we're not to knock on the Kardashians, but we're in this Kardashian feed stupid stuff. And people like, I use that reference because this podcaster I listen to, he goes, for as many people that hate the Kardashians, they're putting out something that people are buying. You can't make money without the consumer part, whether they're consuming it via the reality show or whatever product she's pimping out. But so somebody is allowing this kind of lazy filmmaking, and like you said, I love me my popcorn movies, but I would like to actually think every once in a while and actually be like moved, God forbid, if I shed a tear, like, come on. And I remember, to beat it to death, like I literally cheered when Cap did that to Thanos. I cried every time. Like I teared up because I was like, a little boy loves Captain America since I was a child, and I teared up. But I haven't had that in a Marvel movie for a hot second. The CGI animals in Guardians 3, got it, but it shouldn't be the exception to the rule. Go back to the 80s. Or 80s and 90s, you had Platoon. We were talking about this today. That's why it's a very heavy military one. But you had Platoon, Apocalypse Now. You couldn't accidentally, you ever see those pictures they're showing on Instagram where on this day, they had a picture of a theater and it had the movies that were on, being played. They were all 100% like A+ movies in those theaters, and now it's like I don't even know what this movie is that's playing in the theater, And
yeah, and
they're
to
making
do that, exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm going to pull up right now on my phone and look at my local theater and see what's playing, and I'll bet you at least one or two of them are available for streaming right now.
I bet it's Super Mario. It's going to be like Super Mario Brothers. It's going to be Guardians 3. Maybe one John Wick 4 in there. Maybe they're still showing a John Wick.
I'm trying to remember what the last movie was.
Guardians, Evil Dead Rise, Fast X, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Guy Ritchie's The Covenant, John Wick Chapter 4, which is, you can buy that now. You can stream that. Little Mermaid, Super Mario Brothers movie, you can buy that as well.
Yep.
And The Machine. And
all right, Little Mermaid. Okay, Little Mermaid came out, so that's pushing. There's some new stuff, and Fast X just came out. But I mean, none of those are original IP. All of those are existing properties, or in Disney's case,
sequels and remakes.
And then let's go back to, not to beat on the Fast X, but that's another that's the Kardashian of car movies. Like, it started out tolerable. The first one was a street race gangs, and now it's just people are paying for it, and they're still making it. So
it's wrestling. It's a wrestling movie. It's a wrestling movie.
Vin Diesel has superpowers. He is durable. His friends have been to space.
Yep.
And that every time he says family, he gets stronger.
It's like I just see his power meter go up in the corner.
It's like a Popeyes cartoon. You know what I mean? Like, he gets in the car, and then he zooms and saves the day.
We as consumers are still saying, yes, we like that. Do it again. No, like you said, I don't want to like make like a stand and cancel it, but for some reason we're sending the wrong signal.
Well,
we send that signal.
Well, the reset's happening. The writer's strike is happening right now, and
change, and
I think that since COVID, these especially these creative industries have been the pedal to the metal, pushing them as hard as they can, and we're feeling this burnout. And I don't think that's not why this strike is happening about burnout. No one's doing this for a vacation, okay?
No,
but it expedited a lot of conversations. I think that maybe if the industry was slower and the last couple of years were normal years, maybe this doesn't happen until
delayed. Yeah, this 100% would be delayed for sure.
But this feels, and it doesn't even feel like it's the right time. It just feels like it has to happen.
Yeah,
because it's getting worse.
Yeah, it just snapped. And that's the thing is like, and I say this as a kind of a disclaimer. I say this as a fan and a wannabe, I don't know, Hugh Jackman or whatever, but like, there's a reason now because, like you said, of that pedal to the metal, and that's why then they get scared and have to go to the guarantees. And that's why me as a fan, I'm tired of seeing The Rock and everything, or Chris and everything, love him or hate him. And then as a stubborn wannabe actor, you don't get, like you said, the whole industry's burned out. So then if you aren't The Rock or Chris Pratt, you have a bunch of strung out, metaphorically, beat to death creators going, I'm not The Rock, I'm not Chris Pratt, just give me a chance.
Do we need to ban testosterone and performance enhancing drugs like in baseball and acting? Do we need to make these guys actually look like their age? Because I'm going to let you know, there's no testing. I don't think America wants to know what these men don't look like on roids, everybody, okay?
That's what I love about, speaking of Sunny in Philadelphia, what's his butt when he got all ripped?
Rob McElroy.
Yeah,
he got super fat one season, then jacked the next season.
As a joke, like how crazy is that? Like that's a hell of a joke. But like he was on Conan, and they did the whole "What did you eat? What did you train?" and all that. And he goes, "Well, it's a lot easier when you have a person injecting you every 3 days." And I was just like, "Did anybody hear that?" And he just kept on going. He didn't say it jokingly. There was no satire to it. And he's like, "Yeah, people feed me. It was easier to be fed, and people told me when to work out, and they told me what to inject." And I was like, "Okay." So like I gave him the most credit out of all of those, and he's the least, like you said, like jacked facade of fakery. Like we grew up with the comic books we have. That there's something about our whether it's back in the times of the Greek, the gods, whether they're literal gods to them or gods as in an idolization of a Captain America figure, they're larger than life. That's where the phrase comes from. So I get that aspect of it, but this is the finicky, if I was a parent side of this, there almost needs, like you said, to be a disclaimer because I'm really passionate about fitness, is it misleads the poor girls and boys that this is possible. I know that's a whole other side, but still, I agree. Like it needs to come clean.
Yeah. It's crazy that like you when you hear about people getting a Marvel movie or one of these franchises, like, oh my God, they got to go on the diet. Like, oh no, they're going to go to the they
Somebody's
have to
going to feed me.
yeah. Well, and I mean, I guess the goat of this is Christian Bale. I just watched him in Vice. Like, no,
Yeah.
why are people doing that? How can he do Batman and the Machinist in the same year? That's that's insane.
Yeah. And I was just watching. I can't remember who it was. I went on a random thing, but they're talking about. Oh, it wasn't Zachary Levi, but they're the two actors that were in the movie were talking, and one would in for the sequel for the first time. I'm completely forgetting the movie, but the first one was the vet, and they're talking about like, hey, what did I do? And he's like, well, I got bulked out, and I did this, and I. He's like, just ask wardrobe to add some more padding to your suit. And the guy's like, what? I've been training for 6 months, and the veteran in the previous movie was like, yeah, don't do that. Like, obviously, like Zachary Levi's costume always looked weird because he's a skinny guy, so that just looked, but it worked for that goofy character he was doing, and that obviously Shazam's a whole other conversation. But nobody can be The Rock, because he's in Black Adam. But
I just watched Shazam 2. Taylor did it. Taylor saw Shazam 2. I had not seen Shazam 2. I waited for it to be streaming. It's streaming. I watched it. I got thoughts on it.
We have a whole other show if we got thoughts.
We have a whole other show on that one. I liked it for what it was, but I have lots of thoughts too.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have the comeuppance of the movie, if you're gonna have that big event where it like rewrites everything, have that be the whole third act of the movie. Why not have that just be the thing? Why?
Very off to the happenstance.
Yeah, a lot of that movie feels happenstance to me.
Yeah. Well, I liked when it's formulaic because it goes back to like, they're like, well, it worked in the first one. That's why Deadpool 2 is kind of funny. They actually are self-aware. They're like, well, it worked in the first one. We'll do it again. Or 20 Jump Street. There's so many books in 22 Jump Street that do that.
I love that movie, both of them, for the self-awareness. Like in the first movie, in the police station, where he says, "Oh, we're resurrecting an old project from the '80s because the people who think of these ideas don't know any better, and they think that we won't pay attention." And then the second movie, they're like, they just want us to do the same thing again, and they just thought doubling our budget meant more money.
And it's a running joke. The whole second movie, we're like, we don't have a movie for these money for these explosions. We're out of money.
We spent it all in The Office. Why am I wearing crocodile shoes? You have no idea.
That works, But then it's for some reason, the Shazam thing. Like, I wanted to like it. We have our own little quirks and nuances. I wanted to like it as the family one out of all the ones out there. Take everybody to it. But again, it was a template from the first one. Act goofy. Bad guy, goofiness, win, and family. A little bit of fat sex in there, and it's just like I always reference Godfather. I just want to see a Godfather movie, and nobody's going to give him the money to do that. I heard Air was good, and maybe we need to watch that. I heard that was exceptional cinema. But again, it's not a true story. I want a fictional good movie.
Well, no, funny enough. I heard them talking about this over on the Red Letter Media channel over on the YouTube.
Yes.
But like all of the big directors now that aren't doing superhero movies, it's based on a true story. I mean,
I'm not a creator, but there's people that have ideas. I know.
No. It has to be based on World War II. I like Christopher Nolan a lot, and this is not a choice. But like anytime he wants to do something that's not actiony, it's like, oh, it's got to be based on something.
Yeah,
right. It's Dunkirk. Movie's great, and I again, we can talk like 1917 is one of the best war movies of the last couple of years. I love it. Dunkirk is amazing, but the thing that gets an audience in there is that this actually happened.
Yeah.
There's nobody doing.
But would they have made Dunkirk or greenlit it for financing had it not been his movie? They wouldn't have come out of the blue because there's no big name stars in it. It's his movie. But if they pitch that, we have this movie with cool long shots and it's about horrible war. Who's directing it? A guy named Steve. They're like, no. Is The Rock in it? Is it going to be Christopher Nolan? Like, they need big names.
But even on that note, the other part of the pitch, we're going to show you the same 20 minutes of a fight 3 different times from 3 different angles.
Exactly. For some reason, we'll do that. They'll greenlight that project any day of the week. Oh, they'll remake Blade again. Like, see, that's the thing, is it goes like there's remakes now that they're not even. The first one's barely even dead. Like,
listen, Blade's in a world of hurt. They don't know what to do with it. It's been postponed again. It was supposed to happen.
That's
I
gonna be
don't.
an abomination. I don't know how that's going to happen. Like, and
I
again,
don't know how they're going to make a PG-13 Blade movie because the source material doesn't fit PG-13.
Yeah, it's horrendous. And
You
again,
take them, they make them aliens.
When you said that, my producer brain was like, what gets the most butts in the seat? The biggest age range, PG-13. But then they're in the Venn diagram. I keep referencing this weird metaphor. They've now neglected source material, and I dare say I could lump source material with fandom, because a lot of times they're kind of one and the same. So they now isolated the source material and the fandom by getting more butts in seats, and they kind of got a name in the guy with the actor. I forgot his name, but it's like, and what's the other thing? Is recognition now. Recognition is like, for some reason, a pitch for a story. Like, no.
But that's the thing, though, is that Marvel has never adhered to source material. I think the only movie the only Marvel movie that actually was somewhat reverent to the source material was the first Captain America movie. Everything else has been, let's reinvent it as hard as we can, and the fans will recognize it because there's certain bullet points that we get.
Again, and they found an overlap of the Venn diagram that, like, Billy Bob down the street doesn't know Captain America from Adam. So he knows America. We don't have source material.
But there's still a cinematic quality to those movies because of that. Iron Man, you're right. That Iron Man is not one-to-one from source material, but there is enough there that this is the cinematic version of it, and it feels cinematic. It feels like it hits those marks.
Why? And I know this is the question of no duh. But then why do what I find to be great reference materials, going back to like especially like the Frank Miller, the 2-part movie, was Dark Knight Returns 1 and 2. You could see Snyder just snagged almost screen grabs, and so like he honored it in the source material, but it died. But I also thought source material be damned. Cinematically, it was amazing to watch. It could be a dumb popcorn movie. You're like, I don't know anything about Batman and Superman, but I know Batman and Superman. Give me my popcorn.
Snyder messed up because, listen, I had only seen the theatrical versions of his movies. Mm-hmm. And when Taylor was telling me how good these movies were, I was like, I don't know what you are talking about.
How are you friends?
So he had me watch the director cuts of them, and specifically Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
He needed to introduce, because in that movie, he's talking about how, Alfred, we already tried the other ways. They don't work. We needed to see the movie of him fail. We needed to see him try those things. We needed to see him put on the robot suit and finish the movie that way, so people know, like, this has been escalated
soon. And that's where Marvel was great, is they peppered in story. Here we're going to introduce Iron Man, we're going to introduce Captain America, source material or fan be damned, whatever. Enough of that Venn diagram I keep referencing, but they planted them where they just jumped into, like, they tried to jump, like, oh, now we're going to do Civil War right after we did, the Man of Steel. Like, whoa. You're missing like 7 movies, and like you said, end in the mech suit or whatever, and then get to see him fail. Like, well, didn't they do that in the Dark Knight Returns cartoons? Like, you saw him beat to crap. You saw him as old Bruce. I need a mech suit because I can barely get out of bed, guy. And I don't know that's the whole story. I'm not a great storyteller, but I would like to think the thing I like about it is I can't relate to Black Adam.
Wait a second.
There's a huge argument. Like, this is very pitchy, but I promise I don't mean it to. But like this Reacher thing, we hadn't met yet. Taylor and I might have just started overlapping. But when Reacher was casting for Amazon, they wanted a new face, a 6.5 foot tall actor. There's like 4 of us in LA. I was pitching the crap out of it. And I made this fan movie where I actually took a book. I was a huge fan of the Reacher books. And I know this is pitchy, but I'm going somewhere with it. I took one of the scenes and made a fan movie of it, but I did we're talking about here is I made my own version of it, and all the super fans of Reacher like butchered me. They're like, he wouldn't get beat up that much. He would just do the lay to waste instantly. I'm like, yeah, that would have been a 2-second movie. We need to see is he Superman? We care if Superman. But that's why Black Adam wasn't a good movie. He was never in peril. Superman, at least when Kryptonite's around, you're like, oh, I relate to the guy, even though he's this out of world alien. I go, oh, he's like me. I am tired and injured. And that's why I've always loved Batman, is he's beat to hell. He's an old, beat up man full of scars and tore up tissue, and he still goes for it. He's like that amalgam of gods and us watching him on TV. And I think that's where, like you said, where we're going is like when they get too gaudy, you don't care. Like, why do I care about these movies? These
Well,
characters?
it's why consistently over multiple films, over multiple franchises, it's why 19-year-old Peter Parker is the kid that people are just like, man, this guy's life sucks. Like, I can relate. He's got a bad job. He's got, you know what I mean? It consistently is that character. It's why whenever they decide, it's why the X-Men will do better than whenever they bring the Fantastic Four with their privilege and their scientific educations, where that element,
that.
Think about it, like, right, like
they're very blessed.
They are the King Arthur myth of the Marvel universe, right? They're this royal family, everything that they're in, everything. She's, you know what I mean? Like she was right. Where the X-Men, nobody wants them around. Nobody wants your blue freak thing. Get that guy out of here. That guy scares children.
Exactly, and that goes back to, because I did just go through my whole chronological. I'm still in the middle of it, of all the X-Men, including like the Wolverine offshoots and all that, where you actually, I'm not putting words in their mouths, but you could actually see the stories were, I would imagine, based on segregation, racism, and there was a deep meaning to it.
Bryan Singer starts the movie in the Holocaust.
Exactly.
Like, let me show you the stakes at what we're at.
Yeah,
if you are deemed a different person, we will put you in camps.
Yeah.
Cut to the modern day where which means I guess mutants are genetic Jews. I don't know where that's going with that imagery. They've evolved with their superpowers.
Parallel.
Maybe. But again, a new unknown group that people are scared of that are being otherized. So like, yes, the stakes are very clear in those movies.
But we don't have that with, like, that's where I go back to like ethos, pathos, and all that cool, here's how to write a movie, storybook 101. But like that, the reason those work, we can relate to it. Like Cliff Booth in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we kind of related to that because we're all sick, tired. If you do drugs and you just want to kind of go peace, man, where people are like, not Cliff Booth, the Brad Pitt character. Cliff Booth was DiCaprio.
Right.
The Brad Pitt character, I forgot his name. People loved him because they're like, oh my God, it's cool to see the best looking man on the planet just be like how we feel.
He was Cliff Booth. Rick Dalton was
I got it backwards. Thank you. But like, that's the thing, is like just a little bit more ethos or pathos or both.
Well, maybe it is that they're not referencing old enough Hollywood, because as I was watching Shazam 2 and as that movie gets into the third act, and all of these Harryhausen creatures come out, why not just do a Sword and Sandals movie with Shazam? Why not have him go island to island fighting mythical beasts and he has to trick them with his wit or something like that? Because that movie is that really pretty girl from West Side Story and then some other ladies. And
that's a bunch of... We didn't feel for it. And I don't know why until you say this. Like, we could pick apart some things about Shazam for sure, but like, he was losing, he was getting beat up a little bit, but for some reason, maybe this is probably something we all agree on, is the fact when he's Shazam, he acts like a child, but when he's Billy Barton, he's a pretty mature teenager.
Yeah.
So I can't relate to that because I instantly was disconnected during that switch. So then you lose your care. Like when I see Henry Cavill get cut with blood in BVS, you're leaning in. You get that lean in moment, and then they got you if they do it right.
Well, it also means that the character hasn't grown at all. And it means like, that first movie meant nothing. That movie meant nothing.
Then it transcends into Fast and Furious 15. We're like, we're now going down this route. Okay, cool.
I'm at the point with the Fast and the Furious movies, if the last one doesn't end with them driving Transformers, then it's a missed opportunity. Because
that's like the Patton Oswalt story overlap of joining universes.
Yeah,
have you guys seen Stacks? I haven't. I heard there's some big reveals, but
I have missed like the last 3 or 4.
Me neither. I can't. It hurts.
Yeah, I don't. I know it is blasphemous, and if that is the universe you support, let you just know I am an apostate in that church. But they are. It's nonsense. It's a nonsense universe. I follow enough nonsense universes. I cannot mix them up.
I may have stopped at the whatever one it was, where they jumped a car from a building to a building. I was like, I'm done.
I think that was the last one I saw in theaters. I think my wife and I saw that when they're like Dubai and they're jumping from building to building. And
I was like, okay, Tom Cruise in Dubai, I'll buy it, but 2 cars, I'm done.
I just spent $30 on 2 tickets, or I can wait until Amazon has it and I'll just stream it someday.
Hey, well, they're bringing up Tom Cruise. Why do we
A joke I thought about Tom Cruise, but I didn't get to say it. Did you guys see that fan fiction Tom Cruise did called Jack Reacher? What did he think he could be Jack Reacher? Who thought that tiny little Tom Cruise? That's fan fiction to me. You can't tell me they...
Two of them.
Yeah.
It was such fan fiction. He leaned into it and he doubled down.
Funny enough, though, that's a popcorn movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the
Werner Herzog shows up for no reason. You're like, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is like if you go back to the little Venn diagram thing I keep making up, if you didn't know the source material, i.e. the general population, they're like, okay, it's Ethan Hunt, but not so Ethan Hunty.
Yeah,
avenging good guys, bad guys. And see, I think that's all. I was telling Betty this about Tom Cruise. We're going to watch on the 4th of July. That's more important is like these people, their movies, the people or the movies themselves are getting so like templatey that you're losing some of like Tom Cruise crushing it in Mission Impossible, but we're missing amazing performances.
Tom, this is something if you've been born in the last 20 years, you don't know. Tom Cruise is a really talented actor.
Yeah.
Films like Magnolia, movies like 100%. Vanilla Sky.
Yep.
Top five. Remember when we were in high school?
Jerry Maguire.
Vanilla Sky is like the litmus test if we could be around our friends. I'm like,
if
they can watch this.
Donnie Darko and Vanilla Sky like overlapped each other, and they were a really heavy example, because we had all seen The Matrix at that point, so we're already questioning reality. And then it's like,
those weren't too far. Those were within the generation. That just is crazy reflective of the crap. I don't mean in a negative way. The just onslaught of quality we were getting, and yeah, like, but again, they're so nuanced. Like Donnie Darko didn't crush at the box office any more than any other cult film that went straight to video. You know, which is.
Well, with Donnie Darko, I find it kind of funny. I kind of find it sad. I wish it, but I mean, but that was one of those movies that, that was the DVD movie. That was the movie you passed around with your friends. Everyone's got to see this movie.
Yep.
It was the high school version of Fight Club. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it resonated more with me because they're in high school.
Well, and it sucks. It crushes my soul because like people go, oh, Tom Cruise can be not Ethan Hunt because he played Len Wiseman. It's like. That's your litmus test for like Tom Cruise performances. Yeah, it was funny to see a sense of humor in the guy, but my God, like, and it's weird because then this is my schizophrenic brain when it comes to all these topics we're talking about. Actor Jeff, I'm like, wait, you're telling me I get to get trained and do these cool stunts my whole life and get paid for it and play pretend? I will do the same movie the rest of my life, i.e., what Tom Cruise is doing. He's having whether you love him or hate him, he's having a heck of his time living his childhood dream.
Yeah, but he's stressed out. Listen, I heard that tape of him screaming at everybody. Dad got angry. Dad got so angry.
He was legit not happy. But like that's what makes me go. If he loves what he does, you think he'd be like, hey, how about I do another Vanilla Sky before on the 4th of July? Any of the ones that just people are like, oh wait, that was Tom Cruise.
Well, now we're back to the conversation about injections and making sure your body stays strong. So we'll move past it.
Yeah, he's injected. But it's weird because he of all people has the power to tell the studio to F off. I'm doing it my way, and he still leans into just blank Mission Impossibles. But again, they're almost inherently formulaic. He knows he has to clean up himself, which is why
it's funny the way that the Mission Impossible movies are spun, because if they were just a little bit more cheeky, I mean, he is the American James Bond. That is what he has created. And I don't think people know that. I think for some reason we think it's it pitches in the Bourne universe sometimes. It's not. It's American James Bond.
You're 100% right.
And it feels like that's maybe what they're kind of leaning into more now, because I mean, it is comical. He is an old man, correct? He shouldn't be moving like this.
He's what he does. Well, there was a point where he was what was her name? Paula Wagner. He was a producer partner with it, which I'm sure was some sort of like nuance for insurance. Like I'll produce them myself so I can tell you guys to F off and I'll jump out of a plane. But why is he scared why does he have to be the American James Bond? Like why? It seems like of all people, he would have the power to deviate and give us.
He's got a smug face and he takes pretty big bumps in all the movies. So you're like, maybe he'll die in this movie. You know what I mean? You're right.
He's the NASCAR of movies now. We're like, we're going to tune in and see what happens next. I'll sit here.
Henry Cavill's going to put him through a toilet.
And that's the thing is I'll still watch it for whatever reason. Like that fight scene, I'll watch that fight scene over and over again because for some reason, but sucks because I wish he would bring in. You got to admit, I imagine in Hollywood there's probably egos. Shocking revelation, I'm sure, but he hasn't had a Henry Cavill in any of the other movies really, and it feels like it was a show. Like he stole the show a little bit. Like he has a baddie, but he's never had a side by side where equals.
That's now we're talking wrestling movies again. Now we're talking about introducing.
Yeah, we can't have the Rock. I mean, this goes to the Rock wouldn't be in Shazam because Shazam's a good guy and Rock has to be the hero. I mean, I'm pretty biased on my opinion of that, but that's why I think I didn't even watch it, so I won't even say whether it's good or bad. But if he showed up in Shazam, I would have loved that more as a nerd than the standalone Abomination.
You see this weird training wheels, like this weird like universe with a leash on it where like you're only allowed to go so far and then it's like, no, we're not going over there. Come back here. And it just feels and it just feels like it just never is able to like break through that barrier.
We need to all be independently wealthy. Well, that goes back. Tom Cruise is, and he could make The Godfather. He could make a Born on the 4th of July quality acting movie and doesn't. So has he just become part of the machine that now he's not even self-aware to make that creative choice?
Yeah, like Tom Cruise makes good action versions of Adam Sandler movies. He asks his friends, where do you want to go film in the world? They like go do a good performance, but at this point, I know look at, I was so saddened to hear of all Simon Pegg's troubles and some of the things that he had to hide and some of his alcoholism and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, well, yeah, you did this movie franchise where every scene is kind of knocking it out of the park because your scene partner, everyone's looking at him. And there's a kind of a sameness. And when you were hungry and young, all this
handle it. Yeah, now he's tired and a little bit old.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, it all just takes a toll. It's all a heavy thing. And I mean, when you're a kid, I remember again back in my Blockbuster days, going and being like, how was there at that point 8 Nightmare on Elm Streets? How did they keep making this year after year? And I mean, now in a world of John Wick 5 and Scream. What Scream are we on, Taylor?
Yeah, 6. But they also took like 10 years in between a couple.
Yeah, they took but that's the funny thing is like those cookie cutter paint by number franchises, if you will, at the time were the anomaly. They were the weird thing. You had 12 Nightmare on Elm Streets, but meanwhile you had, like you said, in 1 year you had The Matrix, Vanilla Sky, or whatever. Those the weird franchises that were just like, this is absurd, but we're just going to keep churning them out. Those were the outliers. Ratios flipped. Now you have Air, even though it went straight to streaming, but it's supposedly an extremely high, good quality cinema movie. Not Born on the 4th of July. The Hollywood movie, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those are kind of outliers. They got recognition. But now the mainstream, if you will, is the Marvel movies or the Fast Furious movies. And is there going to be a great reset? That's the wonder.
Well, I mean, if the writer's strike, if it goes to next year, and if the other guilds decide, hey, we need to put a little bit more pressure here. I don't know, because if that stops, I already been joking with Taylor, like, I don't think we're getting Christmas movies this year, everybody. There's going to be no
weird. Those don't really happen. Like
I've also been told Hallmark is all non-union anyway. So maybe those things still do happen. I don't know.
That's true. I can't remember. I haven't seen a Hallmark audition for a while. You're right. And it's weird because like this is like psychological way to look at it. And this sounds like the old man comment to make, but like, so back when there were only 3 channels, watching a movie for 2 hours was doable. Nothing would distract. You could easily not be distracted for 2 hours. Now we live in a world, I love that phrase so much, where you actually have to consciously fight distraction for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So now we live in the TikTok generation and short attention spans, Spotify, where you can skip a thing, where back in the day you had to fast forward your tape player. And if you didn't have a really cool car, it wouldn't stop at the next track. You just had to guess. So the audience is that short attention span audience. So maybe it'll never happen until that I don't know what you want to call it, like that design falls. because I have kids, but I imagine I know I helped one of my best friends. I became kind of like a pseudo brother, uncle, or a brother to my best friend, uncle to her kids while she was in the police department. And Godspeed parents. Like I was exhausted because they're going a million miles an hour, and I had 3 channels and a movie on Saturdays. So if you got to make a product for those little crack addict children, you need to churn that stuff out. They don't want The Godfather. They want 10 Fast and Furious movies. That's psychologically, whether they're aware it's quality or not. And is that just that's the de-evolution? As we age, we're going to be going, back when they made Rocky and Vanilla Sky. But then with Taylor's kid,
they are still making Rocky. We're on Creed 3. Now, they have gotten rid of Stallone, and that's sad. And I heard some of the stuff going there, and he was like, you got to give me a good story. And I was like, okay, maybe you should maybe let the creator there.
Here's some insight from a guy I know me. I was at his gym, and I have some weird outlying experiences in my life. And so do you know what forgive me if I sound pompous, but do you know what a call sheet is? Like when they hand you the schedule for the day as an actor. So when you're number 1 on the call sheet, it's essentially going to be the lead of the movie. So like in Batman, number 1 was Ben Affleck. Sure. So number 1 on any of the Rocky movies, number 1 on the call sheet would be Stallone. I guess Mr. I just forgot his name. Creed, the actor.
Michael B. Jordan.
Yes, thank you. I guess Michael B. Jordan in Creed 1, when it was still a Stallone movie, is like, I want to be 1 on the call sheet. And as I heard in another room, a certain very distinguishable voice in another room talking about it, this man was like, hey, just insisted on being number 1 on the call sheet. I was like, this was apparently. So I can see with that little conversation I heard that day, I was like, I can see where he's like, I ain't being part of this. Like, I think he's in the credits for Creed 2 or 3, like at all. I mean, he might have some like Snyder random, Snyder's a producer on everything. Like, because if you pay attention, you guys know this, Nolan produced everything somewhere. Yeah. So, but beyond that, it's very interesting where those egos fall apart at. And then,
yeah, but isn't that also because of the writing and stuff like that you have to basically like, I'll consult me.
Well, and that's
I'm a producer on your movie. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. You should do that. No, you shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. I'm Christopher Nolan. Click.
Yeah. Well, and that's what makes me wonder is like, I'm not creative. Like I always joke with my good buddy Scott, who writes all of our stuff. And like, I think I have ideas. I'll wake up and I'll jot something down on a notebook or something, and I'll hand him the turd to polish. But I always joke, but genuinely mean, I'll be writing something and I'll be like 2 pages in. I just wrote Star Wars. Son of a gun. So for the people that actually have the creative skills to do something new and unique, yeah, there's the hero's journey template that probably matches everything ever since the dawn of time. But how much of a slap to their face is to actually create this stuff and then go, nope, that doesn't check near enough boxes. And they're like, all right, so I got to basically write crap to get this movie made. That sucks.
Well, this was something that I actually had a long conversation with. I'm not sure. I don't think it was you, Michael, someone else. But film studios have stopped caring about the film itself and have become like a corporation. Their job is to fill a quota, fill a certain check enough boxes so the demographic that buys the most tickets is satisfied. They don't care about the art anymore. They care about satisfying the general audience so that they'll get the money out of it.
I know some indie filmmakers that do that. They literally I've been in a couple like where they're like, hey, Westerns are hot right now. They didn't go, hey, I've got a great idea for a Western. They're like, oh, what's hot? Okay. Oh, and it's going to be a female-led Western because that's a cool thing. And they're reverse designing and they're like, oh crap, we better create something now. We have all these they're getting all the ingredients for the cake, but they're like, is this going to be a cake? Is it going to be roast beef? Who knows?
Yeah. And we go through those. We go through those cycles. Westerns was a thing. Harsh cop movies was a thing for a hot minute.
Yeah.
I feel like now it's all dystopian youth movies where some 12-year-old is the hero. Yeah. I thought we were at the end of it, but like, nah, Hunger Games is back, y'all. And depending on ticket sales, they got another one in them, probably.
It is weird because like it sucks because I'm sure there's people that want to get movies made. Like that's why what we could call the greats or the people we at least admire, like why you see the tapering of Tarantino. I'm baffled that Scorsese is willing to throw some crap to streaming. I'm surprised there. And I was like, I'm done. I had a really good run. Let's have the bow on the package be whatever.
It feels like the only buddy left. It feels like Spielberg is just standing there with a sword and a shield, and he's like, why did no one else show up? I feel like he might be one of the few, because you're right. Scorsese poo-pooed and said all this stuff wasn't, this isn't cinema, you're not making anything. Yeah. And his last his last 3 movies, at least last 2 movies, that's where the funding is. And they're like, oh yeah, we'll pay for you, Scorsese. Yeah.
Well, and that goes circles all back. Like everything we've said today circles back to another circle. But none of Quentin Tarantino's movies wouldn't be made now if they weren't attached to his being a Quentin Tarantino movie. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is great, but if you just heard it pitched, you'd be like, that sounds interesting, but we also want to make Black Adam. They're like, oh well, let's finance Black Adam.
Yeah, and we don't have the time to just talk about the fact that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a cinematic experience, even though the story takes place within like 15 miles of a studio. Like it takes place in a very small area of the world.
Which is genius, which is very indie filmmaking. They're like, how can we get the most bang for buck? Like the movies where there's like a panic room or the whole movie takes place. Like what was that Ryan Reynolds movie where it's Buried Alive? Like that's a 2-hour movie where he's literally in a pseudo coffin for the shoot. Like
what he's so pretty.
Overhead. Like no,
he's so pretty. He's so easy to watch on film.
Oh no, I'll watch him in a coffin all day long.
You know what else? I watched that new Dungeons and Dragons movie, and every time I see Chris Pine on film, I go, "He's such a handsome actor." I just like watching him on movies.
Okay, I almost can't take him seriously because he's almost like if Brad Pitt didn't swing for the fences and pull off 12 Monkeys and 7. Like that's where I'm like, I'll confidently say that guy seems funny as hell. Nobody ever says he's ugly, but because he did 12 Monkeys and he defied what we assumed. But so far, Klein or one of the Chris's, he still is the pretty blue guy. Like Wonder Woman 84, it wasn't my 12 Monkeys. I was like. Right. Trying out goofy. I like that dating movie with him and Reese Witherspoon and Tom Hardy. That was kind of funny, but Tom Hardy was the funny one to me. But Tom Hardy, I think, has already established himself to be that.
I think I fell in love with him in those Star Trek movies, and then I just can't. He just that's it. And then I saw him in Bottle Shock. Bottle Shock's a real fun small movie about wine. Yeah, he's in that.
Kevin Kline's in it, right? Is Kevin Kline the?
I don't think it's Kevin Kline. I think it's Hans Gruber.
Oh my God, you're right. It is.
Yeah,
I've seen it, but I forgot. I did not know.
It's got a fun hodgepodge cast, and it's a fun story.
Well, those are the movies I want to see.
Yeah, right.
Like, have you guys seen Happy Texas?
No, that's
William H. Macy. He's a small town cop, and these 2 guys are like runaway convicts. Accidentally, they pose as other people that are definitely not their type, and they embody these people. I don't want to ruin it, but like even the failure movies or the B movies still were great. Like 3 Men and a Baby, like those, they didn't probably get major theatrical buzz, but we all know it,
right?
Like the things at the theater Taylor just mentioned. I don't. Evil Dead. I watched that on streaming because it wasn't. That was really sad. It's like we used to know the 4 movies that were at the theater. Now we're like, oh, okay. So as a wannabe creator, props to the people that are making these movies that we don't know about. So that's a huge that's a huge obstacle right there. Just even fund to one, let alone get it to a theater that Taylor's looking at, and I could probably go to.
Yeah, Coppola talks about how every movie is a mini miracle. That just, and you know what I mean? Like and you hear about his stories about all of these things, and the fact that he still even wants to make movies, and the fact that to get financing for his movies, he went into the wine business. Yeah. He had to be good at business to fund the weird movies he wants to do. Yeah. I mean, that's a very full circle world.
I try to tell that to people, like from whatever I've figured out or learned or not learned or learned from mistakes. It's just the sheer statistics. Like, again, I'll use the tire thing. The odds of 5 people going to a tire store and applying to 3 tire jobs, that's like almost 100% guarantee you'll get a job. But what we only know, because it's media, we only see, like, if people, like, I'll comment something, I'm not even trying to start some weird Twitter feud, and somebody like, oh, you're just some no-name actor. I'm like, just because I'm not the Rock on a billboard every 5 bucks. Doesn't mean for every one of the Rocks or every one of those Scorsese's or Coppolas, there's I don't even want I couldn't even make up a number that seems accurate that's trying. You know, I would imagine, and it seems very like my job harder than yours, but imagine the ratios are drastic compared to any other profession. You know, for people that really want it, if there's some 18-year-old that says I'm a filmmaker and they're just putting in their IG bio, but they're not really working for it, I don't count those. But people like truly hustling, trying, wanting, you know, Karen, as an example, my buddy, I would like to think me, the ratio of every one of us to the Rocks or the Coppolas or ever, like it's depressing, really. Like I said, like the best thing is that it's a miracle anything gets made, like Marvel or Billy Bob's movie we've never heard of. It's more of a miracle, like the straight to DVD thing. If you're like turned on Netflix and they repopulated their library, and you're like, what is this crap? Like they all of a sudden like 40 movies were released nobody's ever heard of. I didn't even see them in auditions, but somehow made.
And get ready for, as Hollywood slows down, the demand for content's there. Netflix signed a huge deal with South Korea, just like for content and stuff like that from their major broadcasting networks.
Yeah.
You're going to see more of those deals. You're going to just see like, great, what's the number one show in Indonesia? Let's put English subtitles on it or get someone to dub it. Because I mean, if Hollywood slows down at all, it's like, great, well, we'll find something else.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we all think we're the center of the media world, but like, I'm going to bastardize it, but Tom Cruise is the Mummy. I think there's like the release that was released in China. They actually had a major character that they could edit out because so it appeal more to a Chinese market or an Asian market, which is just genius to me. That's really clever. So really, at the end of the day, yeah, we are kind of the major creation of film and TV and entertainment, but statistically, there's way more of the consumers in other countries. Like I did a movie in South Korea, and it went. But it was apparently like a box office crusher there, and I was like, it's just a weird ratio of it's very and I'll be flipping through Netflix, and you're like, oh crap, this is subtitled. I didn't even know it. It looked really good. I don't want to read my movie, you know. But there's a lot of good movies. It's I don't know. I just want to wake up in the 90s again. I want to wake up and have the Matrix on the kiosk and go to Blockbuster. Like,
I mean,
man thing to say.
Maybe it comes back. Maybe things slow down a little bit and we take a second back. I don't think, unfortunately, it'll ever be that slow again. I mean, there's not enough time, and to keep these places open, the work has to keep coming in. So, I mean, I don't know.
Lord of the Rings, I don't even know how all those movies how long those all three took to make, but studios don't want time to take that long or want to take that much time to put into amazing movies, The Matrix or The Lord of the Rings or whatever.
And now we're back to Sword and Sandal movies again. Do a great epic movie. Give them some time to film all this stuff.
But then loop into AI now. Like if you think about it from a producer standpoint, that's genius. If you can get all the return on a Coke commercial, I think we've all seen like a Coke commercial floating around, the AI commercial. When the SAG strike forums, I saw one of the SAG people I'm with like posted something like it was a Pepsi or Coke commercial, and it wasn't the messed up AI that has like 6 fingers. Like it was good.
Sure.
And I was like, this is terrifying because really, if you think about it, they had to pay some computer programmer X money, but it was still cheaper than all these extras, a main actor. They had to pay the licensing rights because the client would hire them to make it. That's genius. Like that as a producer, like that would be like, wait, I could spend a penny. I'm going to make $1 billion. Sign
right. Me. Well, I'm glad you know all the other hats as well, because the other people would like to continue working there. One of the things that I wasn't aware of that has just been brought to my attention was one of the first people talking about the issues with AI were the voiceover artists and the people dubbing and cartoons and stuff, because after you've done 5 seasons of a show, they have a pretty good sample size of your voice. Maybe we could just plug it into this machine to do new lines or pickup lines, and we don't need you to come in on Saturday. And it's like, that's a really big deal, because some of these people have done, how many episodes of Rugrats are there? You know, there's 1,000 hours of these shows, more than enough sample size to have a new Rainbow Bright that you can't tell the difference about.
James Earl Jones, when Darth Vader came back, they didn't have to call him up. That's more than enough.
I mean, from my understanding, Disney called him up, said, hey, we'll just pay you the rate, but we have your voice. We're just doing this as a courtesy. So he got paid for them to sample his voice.
Which contractually he probably didn't have to do. I'm sure there was some
Yeah.
where they owned his voice.
Yeah.
The same thing was true about that Lion King movie, because the Your Movie Sucks guy like went through line by line, and many of the lines in that new movie were just the audio track from the other movie. Now, makes sense. He's in his 80s. I'm sure the bravado of him at his height on stage, that's not possible anymore. But it's like, well, okay, why ask him at all? Like, if
giant slippery slope, and that's actually brilliant, because I have people do like audiobooks and all that, and they are going to be the first ones to realize, because audio is a little easier to f with than video. Like, still working on Henry Cavill mustaches, 6-finger AI people, but audio, I think that one's pretty much in the bag. That's like 99%. They got that figured out. Like James Earl Jones, like the only reason it caught my ear, I was like, was because it was so good. I knew it had to be not real, but like if Billy Bob, who didn't know the original James Earl Jones in any of the first Star Wars movies, they would have been like, okay, that was a character talking in a helmet. It sounded great to me, so I was taken away from it because it was so good. So they just got to let us die off, and then they'll have a whole new generation of people to trick. No harm, no foul. We'll be like the great people left over in the Book of Eli, talking about the great media that once was, that nobody believes existed,
Oh, I definitely
movie I want now. I want Eli with nerds.
think of the biggest films of the last generation. No one talks about. I mean, they talk about them in film circles, but the mass public isn't talking about the original Planet of the Apes or Ben-Hur or Spartacus. You know what I mean? And those movies, now they haven't done remakes of them necessarily, but they've used those IPs. Those IPs have gone other places.
Yeah, well, the only ones that have some sort of like stick in the zeitgeist with the civilians, if you will, like you said, the filmmaking circles, that's going to be us, and we'll bring it up forever, are the ones that change like the industry. Like, I think the Matrix will stick around for a while because of what it did with special effects. I think the Lord of the Rings, because the first one that took something so big, just examples like that. But they're even on a really fragile, thin piece of ice to be remembered by the average public. Like, it's the Ben-Hur and all that.
Well, I'm real worried because Mel Gibson's coming back up to go swing the bat, and he's going to do some Fever Dream Jesus movie, and it's going to be nuts, you guys. I think
that's my perfect example. I use this example all the time. Like when it comes to filmmaking, whether I'm talking about producer Jeff, wannabe actor Jeff, whatever Jeff, fan Jeff, consumer Jeff, he did it like all personal stuff aside. He's like, all right, I'll play these cookie cutter, I'll do Lethal Weapon action hero, but I'm just going to buy some time, and then slowly I'm going to make a movie about Jesus. And they're like, whoa. He's like, and it's going to be in Aramaic. And he's got FU career and money. So like, I can almost admire that template. That's what I would say with like the Tom Cruise scenario. Like, he could be to FU money and do his version of Passion of the Christ, whether it bombs or not. Like, that one fortunately worked. I mean, a religious movie won't take so long.
Don't you know that Top Gun Maverick is a Christ allegory? He lifts the youth up. He flies faster than them if they just believe in him.
It's a Christ allegory with Star Wars combined. It's very
The Matrix.
Yeah. That's who I wanted. Have you guys seen Fat Man? Speaking of Christmas movies and Mel Gibson.
No. Is that Donnie Yen's? Is that Donnie Yen's? I can do any movie I want to.
No, the director. I forgot the director. We're Facebook, Twitter friends. Like, I reached out to him after I watched it. I know Taylor's looking it up.
I'll look it up.
Thank you.
Who?
Batman, Mel Gibson. What we got here?
Yeah, that. It's really. If you haven't seen it, it's really good. Like, when I first saw the previews, I was like, oh my god, it's Mel Gibson as Santa Claus. I thought it was like, what's the movie? Scrooge. Do you know the beginning of Scrooge? Or what's his butt? I forgot that.
Lee Majors.
Yeah.
Lee Majors.
That like it was going to be very shticky and jokey. It is seriously good. Like, I hope we can still talk after if you think I'm way wrong if you ever see it. But there's actually some tear-jerking moments where I'm like, oh, like he does he just happens to be Santa Claus. They don't even attend to that.
I saw that Hopper Santa Claus movie, and that movie made me cry too. So maybe it's just Santa Claus movies. I don't know.
But like it just happens to be. Like, I always look at like the Batman with whatever his name, Pattinson. He just is a guy that happens to be Batman. So I think that's why it's an interesting story. It's not a Batman movie as I take it, but it's a movie about a guy that rights wrongs that happens to be Batman. This guy just happens to be Santa Claus. And okay, now here's a plot with him existing within that world. And I've already reached out to the director because he still didn't get big enough like woo where he still like struggled. It wasn't a big like winner. I'm like, you're gonna need a bigger baddie. And the last baddie, the bad guy, and it's awesome. I forgot his name. I hope you're looking at it, Taylor.
Yeah, I'm pulling it out. So the directors was Isham and Ian Nelms.
Yes, Ian. So Ian, and then the bad guy in it, you guys will know the minute you see it, Taylor. He's a really goofy character actor. But I don't want to spoil that he's the bad guy, so you can probably imagine he's in like 7. But
Are you talking about Walton Goggins?
Yes, he is so good as the bad guy in it. Like
he's a great bad guy.
He's the most Walter Goggins he can be in this movie. Like
he's great.
He doesn't go Nick Cage crazy. Like he's not embracing himself that much. But
Goggins is for sure a Cage. You can't go full Goggins for sure.
To an 8 in his Goggins scale.
I've been a fan of him since The Shield. Like he is such a crazy actor that every time I see him in things, I'm like, whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna bring your 100%, and it's gonna be insane.
And if you listen to the commentary, like that's a really fun commentary. If you love those, like the Fat Man commentary, the director talks about Goggins all the time. And he talks about all of these little nuances of him. But I reached out to him. I was like, you're going to need a bad guy, and he's going to be the brother of Goggins because we both have dark hair. I'm a big badass guy. I'll grow my angry beard picture that Taylor used for that thing, and I was like, well, I can't say no yet. And I'm like, I'll call you every Christmas.
That picture you gave Taylor is the best you on a mercenary death squad. Right. You look like that guy at the beginning of Zack Snyder's Justice League. You're going to the desert to kill people. You could have done. You could have fought Captain America in that elevator. That's a great shot. You got great baby blues.
That's my pitch for Thomas Wayne. Add about 10 years to that. That's my pitch for alternate Batman. That's
the one with the gun, the one who like just shoots people.
Yeah, the Flashpoint paradox guy.
Jeff, I absolutely believe that you shoot people.
Not anymore.
Thank you.
Well, I wasn't just a tire store guy.
You're not, and I don't want people to take that away. And you have absolutely ingratiated yourself here. Anytime you want to come back, I feel like we barely scratched the surface, but part of this conversation was about our lives. And I know that you have lives to get back to. So as you pursue these things and make them into reality, how can people find out what you're involved with? Where do you want people to know where you are?
I stole Hugh Jackman template, like he's the Hugh Jackman. And I was like, well, if it worked for somebody else, do the same thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. So I just Jeff Bosley everything. It's the most pompous, narcissistic handle. Now that in retrospect, I even had my little twin girls I was watching. They always made fun of me, like, "Oh, you're the Jeff Bosley," but I own it everywhere. Like
great
Bureau to Twitter, like I have the Jeff Bosley. So I try to be not a d-bag like the people that like. I want to like. I don't want to get personal training advice from a fat personal trainer. So,
sure.
I look at like until I'm on a billboard, I try not to get like filmmaking advice, but I'm a nerd. But if you see my acting stuff, I'm obviously want to be an actor. But I'm everywhere, and I try to. Taylor's been with me long enough. He's probably like, "Oh, Jeff had a bad day. He's bitching about Hollywood. Oh, Jeff had a day." Like, very self-aware. It's like my own worst enemy. But yeah.
I believe what he just told us, everyone, is that you're a human being with human being feelings. You have good days and bad days. And I get it. It is right. It is whatever that thing is. But it is not about the destination. It is about the journey. And thank you for journeying along with us here at the Cultured Nerd Podcast. Taylor, that's a segue to the end of the show. Flip the screen, buddy. Hit us up at that patreon.com/theculturednerd. All of your shekels help keep the lights on here. Thank you for helping us do that. Show those beautiful names. Look at all those wonderful people. Thank you so much for all of your support. Thank you also to Jose Navarro for making our wonderful logo. Intro TBD. No intro, Taylor. What happened?
I realized I put up the new slide and I didn't put my name back on the intro thing, so I got to fix that.
Okay, well, big shout outs to TBD. Follow him on Twitter, and thank you so much. If you're at home, scan that QR code. Thank you so much for your feedback. If you like this show, tell all your friends. If you hate it, tell Taylor. He's online. We would love to make it better for you. Let us know. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see all you kids and cats next time.